Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabhaa television with me, Frank Pereira. The opposition has accused the government of subverting the process of appointment of the chief of the Central Bureau of Investigation. The government recently appointed Rakesh Asthana, a Gujarat cadre officer, as acting chief of the CBI. The opposition called it an attempt to circumvent the process laid out for such appointments. The appointment of a CBI chief, the opposition said, has to be approved by a panel including the Prime Minister, the Chief Justice of India and the leader of the largest opposition party in the Lok Sabha. On this edition of The Big Picture, we'll discuss the row over the appointment of the CBI chief. Joining me on the program today are KTS Tulsi, Senior Supreme Court Advocate and Rajya Sabha MP, TSR Subramanian, former Cabinet Secretary, K.V.Prasad, Associate Editor of the Tribune, and Gopal Krishna Agarwal, National Spokesperson of the BJP. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on The Big Picture today. Mr. Subramanian, I'd like to start with you, of course, this entire row over the appointment of the interim CBI chief. Now, the opposition has written a strongly worded letter to the Prime Minister saying that the process of this appointment has been subverted. Do you agree with that?
Well, I have not seen the exact order, but as far as I know, the appointment has not yet been made. I mean, my impression is, from what I see in the newspapers and elsewhere, that while the post is not yet filled up, he is being asked to be in charge. This is absolutely standard procedure in every district, in every chief secretary. When the process takes 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, don't forget that under the official system, if somebody goes on leave for over 42 days, you can have an officiating arrangement. If somebody goes on even casual leave for 3 days, you can have an interim arrangement. So these are all technicalities. If the appointment is a firm, proper appointment with tenure, 2 years or whatever, then it is probably incorrect. So I think it is premature to criticize. We should not, my next point is, we should not criticize everything that happens there. I mean, after all, the executive has a right to do certain things. And you should give them that leeway, criticize them and pillory them at the end of the game. In this case, in my view, it is highly premature. If it continues, say, for 3 months, 2 months or 3 months, that's a different question. But I don't have they given any time limit on this?
A timeline has not been given as yet.
I think it is, in my view, it is, shall we say, puerile and childish.
Okay. Mr. Tulsi, would you want to respond to that? I mean, the appointment has not been made. Wait for the panel to be called. It will be done sometime in the near future, maybe. And then, if the process continues in this way, then there is cause for concern.
You see, in principle, I agree with Mr. Subramanian. If it is on account of circumstances beyond the control of the government, on account of which the delay has taken place, it's a different matter. But we saw in the case of ED, who continued as acting enforcement director for almost a year or more. Now, that would amount to, if this happens in the case of CBI, that it continues, then it would amount to subversion of the scheme that is laid down by the Supreme Court and which has been made into a law. The whole question is that the CBI must not act as a caged parrot. It must have credibility. It must have, people must be able to repose faith in the fairness of the investigation conducted by this agency. So a certain amount of freedom was supposed to be given, and that begins with the appointment process in which the Chief Justice of India and the Leader of Opposition are also involved. I only hope and trust that within a couple of weeks maximum, the proper appointment would be made and this interim arrangement would not be allowed to continue indefinitely.
Okay. Gopal Krishna Agarwal, how long is this arrangement going to continue? Would you be able to tell us, whether it's a couple of weeks, whether the due process and the due procedure will be followed after that?
No, definitely we have to have faith on the system. When the bill was amended by the Modi government only in 2014, which set up a new process of appointment of the CBI director. So why should we say that we cannot jump the gun before it is fired? We should wait. This is the government has also said it's an interim appointment, and the process when the bill was amended by the current government in itself, so they will take that into consideration and bring the process, and final appointment will be in due course in the process which has been led before by the court and the government. I don't think there should be anxiety on that count. And with regard to the independence of the CBI, the only appointment of the director is one of the issues. There are several issues how the government allows that to function, and we have seen that earlier also many CBI directors were appointed but they have not acted in the manner which are expected of that high office. So we have to see there are several issues that have to be considered. Appointment of the director chief is one of the important issues, but autonomy of CBI, non-interference from the government, then having transparency in their approach, all things have to be considered to judge the effectiveness of CBI. And I think we should, if the government in itself has passed this bill, so we should have faith that the government will take the process to its logical end, and this is an interim appointment. This should not be seen as a subverting of the process which the government itself has set up.
Fair enough. I think we've gained some clarity out of the statement of Gopal Krishna Agarwal. K.V.Prasad, Mallikarjuna Kharge, leader of the Congress in the Lok Sabha, wrote a strongly worded letter to the Prime Minister about this interim arrangement. Should he have waited and then seen how the process goes on rather than writing this letter first? What was he thinking? Was it plainly a political move?
Well, I think a part of the question was already answered when Mr. Tulsi said what he said, because there is the Congress, which is in the opposition, may have come up with this idea that because the ED is a precedent before them, so such a thing should not be replayed in the appointment of an important post of a CBI. But that having said, the question is, an opposition has a right to raise an issue or flag an issue. It may not always be agreeable to many people in a part of the system, but the opposition leader. And the particular point that the BJP gentleman was referring to, I think that's very clear. The opposition, this was changed because the original act as set up in the Supreme Court and subsequently when it became a law was the leader of the opposition. Now this Lok Sabha doesn't have a recognized leader of the opposition, and hence this question, when it was asked at that point of time, then Parliamentary Affairs Minister said we'll make an amendment to become it. I think it was the nomenclature was changed to the leader of the largest political group or something to the effect, which in effect gave Mr. Kharge as a leader of the Congress party to come in. So these are technicalities. So the question is on technicalities and intent. That is where between the Congress and the BJP is the issue which I see it. Nobody is the right of the government to run the way it wants. It's an interim arrangement. Very clearly the government order said on 2nd of December, whenever the Mr. Asthana was handed over charge by the outgoing thing, the CBI really put out a statement that it was an interim charge. So interim is obviously clear, but the question is, as I said, the backdrop to which Mr. Kharge must have done or red flag the issue is what I think is that, the ED issue.
Indeed. Mr. Subramanian, something like this has not happened in a long time, over 15 years, and way back in 2001 is when something like this happened. I think it was R.K. Raghavan who retired, and his successor was appointed, as an interim chief, and a CBI chief itself was not appointed at that point in time. So it's been 15 years now. Why do you think that they've not been able to call for the panel to sit down and appoint a CBI director?
I would like to speculate on that. I do not know why they are not able to get the panel to. And don't forget that, I don't speculate. I mean, there could be so many reasons here. Don't forget there was no law at that time. Don't forget that the issue came up with Justice Verma's 90s kind of diktat. All of this has come later. So I don't think, all over the country you find interim arrangements made for chief secretary's post, for various posts at various levels, etc., etc. I want to take up one point very correctly made by Mr. Tulsi, which is the question, which is a larger question, I think, in this case, that independence of the CBI. I think it's a fundamental question. Historically, the CBI has been handmaiden. It's a question of degree as to how much the organization would tango with the party in power. So, and there is no question at all. The real debate, in my view, should be, should the government have hands off? We saw in Colgate, we saw in for 2G, how the affidavits of the CBI were being done in the minister's office or in PMO. I mean, this is completely objectionable and it is unacceptable totally. So I think the point that he was raised, I think, should be see a debate. That should we have now, shall we say, a committee of the CVC? Any authority given with full independence, you invite a vacuum, then you invite the government to step in there. Therefore, should the CVC, who is seen to be neutral, or hopefully, for the last 5 years, 4 years, the ombudsman, the Lokpal has not come.
Yes.
Hopefully, he will come sooner or later. Sooner or later, he will be an independent person, and he will be given. So, I think these are the real questions you should ask now at this time. That there is no question whatever that the most credible investigation agency should not be seen in public, should not seen by the public as pandering to the immediate political needs of the system in power. And therefore, here I think it's a question of 1 month, 2 months. Yes, if it's beyond 3 months or 2 months, certainly question to be asked. The larger question to be asked is, this should be used on occasion to force the government to say, what steps are you taking to ensure the independence of the CBI in future, and knowing the general principle that any completely autonomous agency will be completely reckless. What are the kind of checks and balances that you want to put in there outside of government intervention to ensure the functioning of the CBI?
I think Gopal Krishna Agarwal can answer that question. You know, what are the checks and balances that you're going to put in place to ensure that the CBI is completely independent and is not a puppet under the government?
The question is very important, but I want to mention here that only appointment of the chief does not guarantee that the CBI will be independent. Earlier we have seen in last 15-20 years how the CBI of the country has functioned, and there has been various charges on all people that they have benefited, they have aligned with their bosses, of political bosses of that time. So it is we have to see in the larger context what is the objective of the government. Merely appointment will not help into independence of the CBI. It has to come from the credibility of the people. It has to come from the organization itself, and ultimately in democracy, it is the vigilance of the people in parliament, people who are in the public debate, media, all everywhere, wherever we see these issues have to be cropped up, discussed, and then pointed out, so that the mere independence will not come only by law, or mere independence will not come from appointment. It is what is the government ultimate aim, how it functions. It's a larger perspective that has to be seen. If the government is well-meaning, it is committed for transparency, and we see from the current dispensation, especially Mr. Modi is hellbound on this tackling corruption, black money, and setting up SIT. Other issues have been seen. So we have to see what is the intention of the government, how it moves, and in every issues, how the cases are taken care of. They have to be taken in the larger perspective, and you cannot completely disassociate the investigating agencies from the administrative control of the government, or the control of the people in power. That we have to move through them, but those institutionalizing them and checks and balance within this pillars of democracy have to be built accordingly. We have judiciary, we have legislative, we have media. They have to counter the balance and ensure the independence of the investigating agency. They will definitely have an influence from the political setup, because interdepartmental relations are there, then there are so many things. So it is larger perspective have to be seen. Then only we can ensure that the investigation agencies are independent. The government is committed for a transparent mechanism, putting corruption, putting transparency into operations.
Mr. Agarwal, Mr. Subramanian wants to make a point.
I'll make a very short comment here. I don't question what was being said. Clearly, the tone of the new government is completely different than what it was earlier. Clearly, there's a sea change here. But I don't think The issue was not that the public will judge or the media will judge. The issue is what the institutional mechanism to prompt an agency to be neutral. I don't agree with the theory that ultimately the executive is responsible for the functioning of all investigating agencies. Look at the shambles of every single investigation in every state. It's completely under political thumb. This theory that the executive will have to control the investigating agency, I think in Indian context it just will not work. In today's condition, I agree entirely with him that the tone in Delhi is quite different. I think we need to move now, rather than trust the chief minister or the prime minister of the day or the party in power of the day, to institutional mechanisms, which will include that some kind of a supervisory oversight, not today interfering function, but broad and outside of the direct executive. I found, with all due respect, this answer was dilatory, obfuscatory, and not pointed at the need for institutional mechanisms.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Tulsi, what needs to be done to ensure independence of an institution like a CBI or similar kind of institutions?
You see, the law, that is Code of Criminal Procedure, lays down the principles of investigation, fair investigation, independent investigation. It makes the investigating officer completely autonomous in the matter of forming his opinion and placing his opinion before the court. According to the Supreme Court, the investigating officer cannot be controlled by the senior officers also. To that extent, I think that the manual of the CBI is flawed. They cannot even seek the opinion of the Attorney General, because when it happened earlier, the Supreme Court overturned that, and they said that only and only the opinion of the investigating officer will be placed before the court, and it is for the court to accept that or not to accept that or pass orders with regard to further investigation, etc. So we need to develop a culture that investigation is an autonomous function under the statute. It's statutory function, and no one should be allowed to interfere. No minister should be allowed to interfere. No senior officers should be allowed to interfere in the formation of opinion of the investigating officer. If they think that investigating officer is too junior, let them have an SP level officer or DIG level officer. But he must have complete autonomy and deal with the court on his own, and not that the tail will continue to be twisted from various quarters. This realization of autonomy is neither seen in the CBI nor in the government.
Indeed. K.V.Prasad, this autonomy that we are talking about, it's never going to happen, is it? Because the government or the political parties use institutions like a CBI as a tool. And the CBI is nothing but a tool in the hands of the government or a political party.
I agree as vis-a-vis CBI, because it still has a lot of independence within its own, because it's under a separate...
But we've seen what happened with the two...
No, it could be, there could be cases, nobody is disputing that, and they have happened not just now, but they happened in the past, and there is no guarantee it may not happen in the future, but that has individual susceptibilities to get into, because I still remember when I was reporting CBI on my news, previous news organization, I once had a discussion with the then CBI director. I said, sir, how much of influence or pressure is brought upon you? He said, remember one thing, we are dealing with people who are high profile, or cases which belong to very rich and powerful, or people who are very influential. So we are bound to have this kind of pressures, but the ability to withstand is what will mark us out. So all the time we will be under pressure. Somebody or the other, he said, for instance, somebody calls them and say, you know, such and such case has come to you. He says, what does that take? Means somebody is trying to either elicit information or trying to pass on something to us. So that could also be pressure. So, you know, these are issues, how do we deal with it? I don't think we can say, no, autonomy will never come. It will be increased. It also depends on the person at the head, how much he is willing to see, to what limits can he stretch and see he doesn't get encroached or start burning his fingers. And that is where the professional competence and professionalism of the service will be always remembered. It could be odd cases. In every field we'll have all kinds of people will make the world. But then the professionalism, the institutional checks and balances, what Subramanian was referring to, or the other panelists were talking, how do we strengthen them? And no system is going to be foolproof. But increasingly learning out of each case, we need to keep on solidifying it and ensuring that how can we make it better.
Indeed.
Even in America, where you see appointment of various things are left to the Senate, but doesn't mean it's foolproof. You always have something or the other coming up. So no system can be foolproof in that extent, but you can only try and improve, learn upon it, and see how can you make it better and better. I think that's the only way.
Mr. Subramanian, do you see that happening? Do you see us trying to learn from our mistakes and, trying to improve institutions like the CBI?
I'm not sure that Gresham's law it goes contrary to the thesis that we have propounded here. I think politics, the way we are playing it out in India, demands every shortcuts, etc., etc. I'm not sure that the time has now come to say nothing can be done about it, and we have to leave to the good sense of the electorate, good sense of the politicians, etc., etc. I think that would be too idealistic, number one. Number two, we are seeing again and again the same issue from Delhi perspective. Look at it from the state's perspective. Look at the kind of corruption that is there, look at the kind of nepotism which is there, look at the kind of maladministration that is there. Is there only one investigating agency in India we're talking about? Should the same principle apply also in the states also? Have you heard of a single CID or a single state investigating agency being we know exactly the kind of day-to-day control, absolute control. We can't even theoretically say this should continue forever. At least we will not succeed totally in making them independent. But at least the moment we say nothing can be done, nothing should be done, I think the game is over at that point of time. I disagree. I think we have institutions available in the states and in center. These are not perfect solutions, but CVC possibly supervises is a solution. Ombudsman, Lokpal supervision, Lokayuk supervision. These are all possible solutions are there. The fact we say human nature is what it is, politics is what it is, we are now dooming our country for continuous decline.
Indeed. You spoke about the Ombudsman, you spoke about Lokpal. Mr. Gopal Krishna Agarwal, unfortunately, we do not have a Lokpal at the moment. Is there a time in the near future where we will see a Lokpal, where we'll see a Lokpal taking on a bigger role as well?
No, what I want to say is that merely law and appointment of director or etc. will not be ensure autonomy and independence of the organization. Ultimately, even if an investigator is very sincere and investigates, gives out a good report, if the government doesn't act on it, then what happens? We have seen that several reports are just lying without any action. So it ultimately boils down to the intention of the people in power, how they want to work. We have to depend on them. We have elected a person, we have elected a party, we have to depend on their intentions and integrity. That's what for 5 years we have to depend on that. And we see in last 2 years, I just give you one figure, about 92 senior officers have been penalized or have been charge sheeted or transferred because of their involvement into corruption. These are the way, this is much higher figure than we have seen in earlier years. So ultimately, if independence is important, autonomy is important, but we have all to depend on the integrity and the intentions of the person in power. Otherwise, merely law will not bring it. Putting another Lokpal on it, though it is, we are saying it may improve the system, but when CBI director is not independent, he is not working, then putting an Lokpal, how will we ensure the Lokpal itself is not influenced by the political bosses? So it is important that the investigating officer, even if he is giving a report, the government should act on it. There should be penalty there as well. A judicial system should be efficient in punishing. We have seen in the past that the punishment has not come. The actions on the part of government has not come. It is now coming, and we are hopeful that there will be more accountability on the bureaucracy. There will be more the penal penalties, and the judicial system in itself will balance the ill effects of influence of the ruling elite. That alone will help into bringing transparency.
Sure, fair enough.
Law and other things, systems will support the system.
Okay, I've got 2 minutes on the program, so I'd like to get closing comments from all my guests. You threw in a few figures there. I have some figures of my own. Over the last 2.5 years or so, there are 30 bureaucrats from the Gujarat cadre who've moved to Delhi. I don't know what that says, but anyways, we leave it at that. But Mr. Tulsi, something that Mr. Agarwal was talking about, how the system itself will ensure that there are checks and balances and will ensure that, the bureaucrats act in a better manner and the situation will change in the near future is what he said. Is that a possibility or do you see that as a distant dream?
No, I entirely disagree. Mr. Agarwal seems to be ducking a bouncer. There is no question of maintaining independence of an institution which is investigative agency if the appointment process is subverted. Is he trying to justify the non-selection by a panel which has been prescribed 20 years ago by the Supreme Court? Even if the new bill is not in force, it doesn't really matter. The question is that if there has to be institutional independence guaranteed for sensitive organizations, you begin with the process of appointment. It's not that the process of appointment itself will deliver everything, but at least you begin with the process of, that's what Justice Verma attempted to do. But the governments, if they don't implement it in letter and spirit, we will have an independent agency which will continue to be a caged parrot.
Indeed. All right. 1 minute on the program. Final comments from Mr. Agarwal as well in 30
Tulsi,
seconds. Yes, please respond. Yes, please respond. Very quickly, but.
Yes, I want to say that we have seen the appointment of judges in the court. But that process is not transparent. Then still we are saying that the courts are intransparent and autonomous. We have seen them working in an autonomy, independence way. That
so you don't want to appoint them according to this process?
I'm not saying that the government will subvert the appointment process. Yeah, we are saying that the appointment
that's what you're saying, that this process is faulted.
One at a time, please. One at a time.
It will be subverted.
Okay.
Well, yeah. We are not saying that the process will be subverted, appointment will not be transparent and the due process will not take place. I am saying merely process in itself will not lead to the result. It is ultimately the intention of the government which has to be taken care of.
Okay, fair enough. We'll let the neutral voice in the program close the show for us. Mr. Subramanian, your final comments. Sum it all up for us in 30 seconds.
At least for the present, the issue of a procedure or a non-regular appointment is not an issue now. It may become an issue in the next
few months.
In the 2 or 3 months or so. At the moment, it's not an issue. I think that there are two critical elements. We are interchangeably talking of both. The probity, the good intention of the party in power, and we are not talking only of the center, we are talking of the state also. It's extremely important. Their good intentions is extremely important. They should follow the follow. Extremely important. On the other hand, it is equally important giving human nature as we know it. The institutions be developed. I don't think it will be wrong to anyone to say institutions should not be there to have checks and balances. We certainly need checks and balances based on past experience for the CBI.
All right, we'll have to leave it at that because we're completely out of time on the program. KTS Tulsi, TSR, Subramanian, Gopal, Krishna, Agarwal, K.V.Prasad. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture and putting things into perspective. For us, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for watching.